Marinero, the Sick Podcast. Joining me today from RDS, François Gagnon. Comment ça va, mon chum?
Très, très bien, merci. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you and to everybody.
All the best to you and yours as well, François. Health and happiness. Those are the two most important things. It's brought to you, the Sick Podcast today is brought to you by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available in Quebec grocery stores and at the beer store. All right, it is Wednesday, and the virtual interviews have started for the Montreal Canadiens. François, there's a name that at one point was an interesting name and looked like he could be the GM. And now we're hearing that he's not part of the first round of interviews. I don't know if that means he won't be part of the second round, but if you can confirm, Kent Hughes is not part of the interview process.
Well, I don't know. I know for a fact that interviews are going since early on Wednesday. There was a window, a few hours opened. Is it made that window wide enough to make sure that everybody's going to get interviewed in this? That I don't know. I am convinced that in one way or another, because everything today is done by Zoom, I'm convinced that Kent Hughes at some point will have a conversation with the committee formed by Jeff Molson, Jeff Gorton, Michael Andlauer, which is one of the owners of the Canadiens, who is the alternate governor of the Montreal Canadiens, and Bob Gainey, who was involved. I'm saying this unless, for some odd reason that I don't know and I'm not aware of, Kent Hughes took the phone and called Jeff Molson or Jeff Gorton and said, please, don't take into consideration my candidacy anymore. So unless this happens, I am convinced that Kent Hughes will have an interview, will be meet one way or another by the committee, because for me, he is still in the forefront in that race, a race involving 9 or 10 candidates right now. That will be narrowed to 3 or 4, and I believe that he would be in that final 3 or 4 if he decided to stay into this race.
François, I've said this from the beginning. If Kent Hughes wants the job, based on Jeff Gordon's press conference where he talked about hiring someone that has a different skill set than what he does, and he talked about his being evaluation of talent, being an agent, of course, contract negotiations, putting together contracts, player recruitment, knowing the CBA like the back of your hand, all that stuff. I believe that if Kent Hughes wants the job, I believe that's the person that Jeff Gordon would give it to.
Maybe that Jeff Gorton would give it to, but there's 3 other members in that committee. And here is where I disagree with you. Okay. First thing first, Kent Hughes for me is a great candidate. He's from Montreal, which is important. He speaks French, which is essential. Is he fluently French? I don't care. He's from Beaconsfield. Bring him in. After a couple of weeks, a couple of months, he would be able to speak in French to anybody who would ask him question in French. So for me, the language issue has nothing to bear in this. Now, here where I disagree with you.
Tell me.
Kent Hughes is a master of negotiations contract-wise. We all agree with that. That's his job. He's an agent. He did it plenty of times with some huge players, Vincent Lecavalier, Patrice Bergeron,
Christopher
Letang. I think he has Matthew Barzal, Anthony Beauvillier right now. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
That said, the Canadiens already have a geek into the CBA, into the numbers, and
John
that guy
Sedgwick.
Is John Sedgwick. Sedgwick has been signed for another 3 years by Marc Bergevin last year, not because Bergevin thought that he would be fired, but because Sedgwick is a great asset for the Canadiens. He was brought in Montreal via the NHL. He knows everything that it needs to be known in all the rules and the what you can do, what you can't do. How can you bend the elastic a little bit further down to make sure that you'll be able to go around the cap if you can legally do it. So, they have somebody there that can do the job. So
if I may, there is a difference, and that is Kent Hughes doing the job that he's done for over 20 years now has his people out there, has his staffers out there, has his bird dogs out there, and, has spread out his tentacles. He has people texting him and calling him all the time to say, you know what? I identified a young talent. That part of it, John Sedgwick doesn't have. But the other things, I agree with you.
And you point a really valid point, but those are the assets of Jeff Gorton. Jeff Gorton is a scout by heart, by mind. It's his eyes, it's his guts, it's his feelings, it's his talent to find talent that brought him to the NHL. So when he spoke, he said that he was looking for somebody to complement his qualities. So here we are in a situation where not only Kent Hughes share some qualities with Jeff Gorton, but he shares friendship, so which is really important. But the Canadians already have somebody that could do the administrative way of work. Now, when we look besides Kent Hughes, you have guys like Mathieu Darche. Mathieu Darche's scouting abilities are certainly not as great as qualities.
No.
He's been assistant GM for 2 years, but he played in the NHL. He can understand talent, and he learned the job, and he could come in as a great partner in crimes with Kent Hughes. So
I agree with you with Jeff Gorton.
With Jeff Gorton.
I agree 100%.
We know one thing, Tony. Whoever is picked, Émilie Castonguay, Daniel Sauvageau, Mathieu Darche, Marc Denis, Kent Hughes, we know one thing. That person will have no experience as GM. So for me,
correct.
The chemistry and the partnership that Jeff Gorton will be able to develop with one of those candidates.
I'll take it a step further if I can. I'll take it a step further. Whoever they hire, based on the names that we have, will not only not have an experience as a general manager, will not have experience as an assistant general manager. Now, you can tell me that Mathieu Darche is doing the job, but doesn't have the title. But what I'm getting at is, has never had the title of GM or assistant GM, which leads us to believe that Jeff Gorton is, quote unquote, the GM by disguise. That does not make whoever will be named GM a puppet, or as they say en beau français, une marionnette. For sure, this person has to be respected and will come in with a baggage of experience, but this person will be mentored, shadowed, brought along by Jeff Gorton for, I would say, several years until this person is able to fly on their own wings. And maybe at one point, Jeff Gorton leaves the organization and they really have a lot more autonomy on the job. Yeah. We would agree on that?
We completely agree on that. Yeah. And that's the reason why it opens the doors for some bolder moves.
Yeah.
Like, does Émilie Castonguay has the credentials to be the Montreal Canadiens GM? Maybe not yet. But the fact is that because Jeff Gorton will be, quote unquote, the active GM, opens the door to her so that she could learn the ropes. Same thing for Daniel Sauvageau. Same things for all the other candidates. Now,
Francois, think about this for a second, if I may.
Let me finish where I'm going.
Sure, go ahead, do so.
And that's what I don't like into this process. You know, when you hire a VP hockey operation or a president of hockey operation, I like it the way the Vancouver Canucks did it, bringing a guy like Jimmy Rutherford, who's 74 years old, who is still young at heart, because he has a 5-year-old daughter, okay? So he's still a kid, but he's the godfather of the one who's going to be the next Vancouver Canucks GM. So Jeff Gorton is not a 74-year-old guy. He's not the godfather. He's not the consigliere that's going to just give you a little bit of wisdom and say, don't do this, Tony. Reflect a little bit more. Don't rush things. You know, Jeff Gorton will be an active VP of hockey operation. So that makes the difference. We don't see a Ray Shero in the candidacy here in Montreal because of that situation. So all the other names are able to jump in. Stéphane Quintal would be, for me, a great president of hockey operation. But because of Jeff Gorton knowledge as a scout, as all the aspects of the job that he's going to do, suddenly Stéphane Quintal becomes a really good candidate because he's known around the league. He has far more experience than any of the other candidates. But is he the candidate that the Canadians want? That much, I don't know.
I don't think so. We're going to take it a step further without making this a linguistic debate. You and I have been around the block for quite a while in this business, you longer than I have. We know, let's not be naive. We know that if Jeff Gordon's name was Gerard Gorleau, that he would be named the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. But because he's not, they want to have a fully bilingual general manager. So now, when Jeff Gordon talked about a different skill set than his, I think when you brought up Matthew Darche's name, you brought up something very interesting, because what Jeff Gordon wasn't was a former player in the National Hockey League. So Matthew Darche, Daniel Brière, Patrick Roy, Stéphane Quintal, Marc Denis, in that respect, make either of them a viable candidate, because that is something that he didn't have, being a former player himself.
And players that for shorter or longer terms play with the Montreal Canadiens.
Correct.
I mean, Daniel Brière didn't play long, and Marc Denis was into the organization just after, at the end of his career, and he was here to show the ropes to young kids. But still, if you look at all the names that you just mentioned, the younger generation, let's put it this way, they all share that. They all share the fact that they played for the Canadiens. They all share the fact that they know the NHL the way it is right now. Marc Denis, in my mind, is, and even much better than Jeff Gordon, is the candidate who knows the best the Montreal Canadiens the way they are now. Because of his job as an RDS analyst on a game-by-game basis, he's the one who knows exactly why the Canadiens were able to get to this Cup final and why right now they are dead last in the NHL. He knows all the reality, the background realities of the team because of his job and because of his knowledge of as a player, and because he still can go into dressing rooms and get more information in there than you and I both together multiplied by 10. So for me, that is what Marc Denis brings. Mathieu Darche brings something different. Stéphane Quintal brings something different. And that's the reason, and Daniel Brière also, because he's with the Flyers. And that's why in this process, all those candidates will need to sell themselves. And maybe if they don't get the job of the next Montreal Canadian GM, they will open up some space for them in another fashion. Let's put it this way. I have the utmost respect for Danielle Sauvageau, for everything that she did in hockey, for the gold medals that she brought at the Worlds, at the Olympics, and with what she did to bring and raise the women's hockey into the world, and especially here in Canada. Do I believe, François Gagnon, that she could be the Montreal Canadian GM tomorrow morning? No. But if I'm the owner of the Montreal Canadiens and she performs well in that interview, I want to push on the mute button after or during the meeting and say, damn, I need that woman in my organization. So if she's not able to get the job as a GM, she could easily come in and being responsible for one of the aspects that we've been criticizing this team for long years, development. Go around, look at the young talent, go here, go there, look at what's going on. Well, why is this guy not going up as quickly as we want? She could be an asset to the Canadiens, even though she is put aside on the GM candidacy part, but she is bringing inside in another aspect of the job.
It should be noted the Toronto Maple Leafs have Haley Wickenheiser and Danielle Goyette in similar positions within their management team. Look, I've said this before, Francois, and I'm going to say it again. There is no salary cap on your management team, on your pro scouting department, on your amateur scouting department. There are, of course, internal budgets, but there's no salary cap per se. I love where you're going. And if I realize throughout the interview process, if I'm Jeff Molson, Jeff Gordon, Michael Andlauer, if I realize throughout the interview process that there are natural born leaders there and people that can help my organization in different facets. I hire several of them. And knowing that the Canadians are handcuffed because they usually limit themselves to bilingual people going forward, instead of losing some of those people to other organizations, I think the Canadians have a duty to actually try and develop some of those people within their organization. So, I'll take it a step further. If I like Matthew Darche, what he's saying, and I like Danny Briere, what he's saying, and I like Marc Denis, what he's saying, I know I'm only interviewing for one GM job, but I'm going to try to find a way to hire all three of them.
That's right. And again, going back to that language issue, by the way, give Jeff Gorton Groslo as a last name instead of Gerlo. That will make it nicer for him.
Oh, Le Groslo. I like that one. That one's very good, by the way. Very, very good. Marinaro, it's a Sick Podcast, sportbuffshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and our Sick merchandise. Like it's going to be all right, like Shane Wright, but that's for another show. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. Okay, so now, Darche, Briere, Luongo, Quintal, Roy, Marc Denis, Daniel Sauvageau, Émilie Castonguay, Kent Hughes, possibly. There's a couple of names we haven't talked about. Number one, the name Daniel Doré comes up, who worked alongside Jeff Gordon when he was the assistant general manager of the Boston Bruins. When he went to the New York Rangers to become their general manager, he brought Daniel Doré along with him. I have a feeling that in Daniel Doré, we're talking about the Montreal Canadiens' next director of amateur scouting.
Well, you know what? If the Canadians would have been able to speak with Martin Madden Jr., who is in Anaheim, and he is in the process for the GM over there, and the Ducks didn't give the Canadians the permission to speak with him or to talk to him, that gives you an indication.
François? It was permission denied?
That's my understanding. And that shows to the people that say, and you've been guilty of that a couple of times, that, we only look in Montreal and we're narrowing the pool. Of course, we are narrowing the pool because you have to get the greatest candidate that can also speak French. There's a guy in Anaheim who would have been a great acquisition for the Canadians, but the Ducks say, no way, he's going to stay here because he's a whiz kid on the drafting aspect of the game. And we developed him and we want to keep him in our organization. So if he's not the next GM, and I don't know that he's going to be or not, but one thing I'm sure of is that if he's not the next GM, he will get a boosted title so that he will get more responsibility, and that will explain why the Ducks didn't give permission for the Canadians to talk to him.
Manson, Carlson, Anderson, Gibson, Vatanen, Palmieri, Fowler, Lindholm, Theodore, Comtois, Steele, Raquel, Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, and as the past, that was as director of amateur scouting. Francois, you just touched on a candidate that I am very impressed by his track record. Martin Madden Jr. It's too bad that permission was denied. I don't blame the Anaheim Ducks, but if permission would have been granted, I would tell you this, and I've said this before, I would give him a blank check. I would say, you're my GM or you're my director of amateur scouting, whatever, but you sign the amount in your mind. I think the work he's done in Anaheim is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it is. And when you bring on the names that you brought, I mean, it's not always like the easy pick that were made. And that's when I like to look at the job of a director of scouting,
Of course.
When you take the list and you're number 5 to pick and you pick the consensus number 5 pick, that's good. But when you do what the Florida Panthers did a couple of years ago, when everybody that thought that Seth Jones would be the number 1 pick, he'd go to Colorado because his dad, who played for the Nuggets at the NBA star there, and he was born in Colorado, and they needed a defenseman. Oh, suddenly Patrick Roy is there and says, Nathan McKinnon is a great guy. We should go at this guy. And, so suddenly the number 2 pick is open for Seth Jones. I, for one, said, wow, there's a gift here for the Florida Panthers. And they bring a name like, Sasha Barkov.
Yeah.
What? No, that's a move. That's a guy coming from left field. Nobody saw it coming. And you have the guts to pick him number 2. pushing Seth Jones a little bit further down, and then Tampa brings Jonathan Drouin, and
Yeah.
finally at number 4, Nashville Predators were able to
Yeah.
win the lottery of Seth Jones. But a move like what they did in Florida that year, for me, that's praise to a director of scouting.
But now, do you understand my whole rebuild thing? And maybe I've been going on with it for too long, but I got to tell you something. Look at Florida nowadays. They might win the cup, they might not. Look at Colorado. They might win the cup, they might not. Edmonton might win the cup, they might not. Toronto might win the cup, they might not. The reality is, one team wins the Stanley Cup at the end of the year. It's obviously, probably, the most difficult trophy in all of sports to win. But Francois, at least you're going to be entertained. And I say this, I watched Cale Makar score an unbelievable goal last night. He was the 4th pick overall in the draft. Colorado Avalanche fans, they have Makar, who was picked 4th. They have McKinnon, who was picked 1st. Florida fans have Barkov, who was picked 2nd. Huberdeau, who was picked 3rd. Edmonton fans have McDavid, who was picked 1st, and Draisaitl, who was picked 3rd. And Toronto fans have Matthews, who was picked 1st, and Marner, who was picked 4th. Once again, these teams may or may not win the Stanley Cup. But if you're the fan base and you get to watch players like this night in and night out, and that's why I want the Montreal Canadiens to rebuild, not because necessarily it's going to bring a cup, because as many examples as I can give you of teams that have won the cup through a rebuild, you can give me as many examples of teams that have not, but at least you're going to be entertained. I mean, when was the last time the Montreal Canadiens had a 40-goal scorer? Vincent Danfus? When was the last time they had a 100-point player? Mats Naslund? When was the last time they had a 50-goal scorer? Stéphane Richer? You know, like this, it's been too long. I want, when I go to the Bell Center, if I'm paying $200 per ticket, $400 for 2 tickets, $38 for parking concessions, the night at the very least costs me $500. I want somebody to lift me out of my seat. And with all the respect that I have for Carey Price and the career that he had, me personally, this is said with all due respect, I don't want to pay $500 to watch a still papillon or the lateral movement from left to right. I don't. I want to see someone score goals or be able to go end to end. That's why I want the rebuild.
You have a fair point there, but I will tell you respectfully that in the last Stanley Cup Finals,
yes,
and the in the first, second, third round, or third and fourth round, when people were allowed to get there, fans like you paid 15, 20 grand for a ticket because the team was winning. So you're right. It's been a while since they got 100. Well, more than a while. It's been an eternity since Naslund scored 100 points and the 50 goals 2 seasons in a row of Stéphane Richer and all those things. But when the team is winning, those aspects are put aside a little bit. And that's why the Canadiens have no right to be where they are now. You need to win. And to give your fans at least the idea that game in and game out, you have a chance to win, unless you're not going to get the support. And this year, it's been atrocious for many reasons, but it opens the door to what you've been saying. Now,
you also have to be able to build.
Sorry, but the Canadian picked 2 times with the number 3 pick.
You're right.
2 times. I know Trevor Timmins for a really long time. We started in this business together in Ottawa.
Yeah,
100 years ago.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, and he made some great picks. The problem for Trevor is that the 2 number 3 picks that he had, didn't pan out. He made some great picks in 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, but he made huge mistake with those picks. And his best picks in the first round that were made were traded. So Correct. It doesn't give him the chance to make sure that, he was not able. And if the Canadiens would have picked Anze Kopitar in 2005 instead of Carey Price with number 5 pick, which I thought they would do because they were in a huge need of a centerman, we would have got, I think, in Montreal, a player that would have gave you 3, 4, 5, 7 season of 70-point plus, and maybe to get around the 90-point, maybe not 100, but you would have get. So Carey Price did all that with the Canadiens, but you're right. If you want spectacular goals on the other hand, and you don't like the butterfly and the look how it's easy to be as good as I am, it's tough to evaluate or to appreciate what Price gave you. But drafting is an art. There's 90% chance of you're gonna miss, but when you have to maximize the 10% chance to hit a home run. And that's what they were not able to do in the first round. And that's why the Canadians are in this situation right now.
I'll also say that, look, I think we can all look back at the Galchenyuk trade, look now and say the pick probably should have been Morgan Rielly, who went 5th. Some people will say Forsberg.
Philip Forsberg, yeah.
Some people might even say Hurdle. But I mean, when a player goes almost 20th, you can't expect that team to take him at number 3. But this is why I also think you can't be bad in a couple of years where there's very average drafts. But if you're bad for 3-4 years and then you make some good deals, chances are going to fall into good players. And this is why I think if the Canadians can be bad even next year, which is the Bedard and the Mishkov draft, and it doesn't mean they'll get the first or the second pick, but you have to get it. What I'm getting at is you have to get a little lucky too. When you're bad, it has to be a really good draft year. And if it's not, you have to be able to draft the best player.
Well, yeah, but you said it. You need some luck. A couple of years ago, in one of the worst cases that I've seen of a team decided to tank, the Vancouver Canucks tried to invent some ways to lose. And they came to the lottery as the favorite to win the draft lottery. They lost it, and they fell down to 5 or 7. I don't remember exactly. And they picked a guy named Elias Peterson, and they look so sad of picking that guy because they look at all the other guys that they would have liked, and he's probably the best of all those.
That's a good point.
So here you are, with some the luck of the draw and the luck of maybe this guy might be better at the end, and they don't know it. But if the Tampa Bay Lightning would have known that Braden Point would become one of the best, if not the best all-around centerman in the game right now, they would have not waited the 3rd round to pick him up.
Oh, you're right about that. But I'll also tell you that as much as the Tampa Bay Lightning did an amazing job with drafting Palat, Kucherov, Point, Killorn, and so many others, and Vasilevsky when they did, that it all gets started with drafting Stamkos at 1 and Hedman at 2. And so if they weren't bad for a couple of years and get the first 2 picks, they don't end up winning the Stanley Cups that they did. Marinaro for matrixhomefitness.ca. If I didn't put as much food into my mouth as I have over the past couple of years, I would not have needed the treadmill. But in a way, I'm glad that I did because I'm having so much fun. Bring it home. I built a gym at my place with my Matrix T75 treadmill with the XUR console, Francois, where I can go on Instagram and Twitter and Netflix and YouTube and have my own program with iFit. It's a beautiful thing. matrixhomefitness.ca. Okay. Speaking of running,
no, I'm not gonna let you with a pass like this. I can't imagine you on the treadmill watching Netflix with a big bowl of popcorn and a pop right next to it, and look at your energy drink there. I can see you standing still there and just giving me the impression that you're working out. Netflix, popcorn, wow, that's you, my friend.
I'm gonna show you something. I worked out so hard last night that this morning I didn't have the strength to take off my pajamas to put on my pants. So look.
Well, I would say that you're guilty of a crime that a lot of us are doing, and I will not go further than that.
Oh, man, but it just goes to show that I am working out as much as I can. Okay, so is there a candidate in ending that is not on this list that no one's talking about that we should, in your opinion, for the Habs vacant GM job?
Wow, that we should. Right now, because of the reality of the situation, because of who is Jeff Gorton and what he's doing, I would say no. If, and it's a huge if the situation would have been different, and we would have, as a VP, a Jimmy Rutherford kind of guy, and my example will be bad, and you'll see where I'm going with this. I would have seen a Ray Shiro type of guy in Montreal. I would have loved to have seen that. Now, because of the situation right now, there's a name that never brought up, and me as an owner, I would have maybe liked to go and look at what was possible to do. I really like what Pierre Dorion has been doing with the Ottawa Senators, with an owner that is tough to work
Yeah.
with a budget that is smaller than your popcorn budget for a year, and being able to rebuild year after year with young talent. That's a name that I would have looked at. But otherwise, the situation the way it is right now, I like the pool candidacy, and I'm eager to see who's gonna end up being the next GM.
Ray Shiro, whose first name is actually Régent, by the way, and not Ray.
Yep.
Two very quick points here, and I know we've gone on a little long here. I so appreciate your time, but I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the nomination of Chantal Machabee as VP of Communications. She worked at RDS for over 30 years. I don't know about you. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it pop up on the Montreal Canadiens Twitter account earlier this morning. I think it's safe to say, and I'll let you pick up on this, but everyone loves Chantal, and this seems like a home run.
For me, it is a home run. I would lie to you if I would have said that I knew that it was coming, but I had a gut feeling. The day that Marc Bergevin and Paul Wilson were fired, and the day that Jeff Molson said that they would open up to women in his organization, that was something that he wanted to do. For me, the name that Chantal's name popped in my head, and I say, she is the one. I never thought that she would accept the job because she's a reporter. She's a journalist at heart. And that's a tough job when you're a journalist, because it's not everything that you are able to say. And we dig for information, and she dug for information for many years. Now, I spoke to her today, and I congratulate her. I was not able to hug her because of COVID and because we were on the phone, but I will do it. And what convinced me that she was the person for the job is that before saying yes, she took a long period of time to think about it and to make sure that Jeff Molson, France-Margaret Bélanger, who is acting chief officer, Jeff Gorton, were all on the same page and said, you will let me do what I need to do. You will let me open the window to fair communication, open up things with reporters. She's been on, I will say, the good side of the force for many years. And she knew exactly how tough it was to sometimes grab some info and to make sure that we would know the truth instead of talking about supposition and rumors. And if she said yes to this job, I am convinced that she said yes because the owner, France-Margaret Bélanger, and Jeff Gordon said, yes, we will follow you where you want to go. And for me, that's a great news for her because it's a great job. It's a huge job. The challenge is immense. But if somebody can do it, she's the one. And nobody at your radio station, my TV station, our friends at the others TV, and I'm not putting any names here voluntarily. All the papers, whatever name, whatever language, all the radio stations, everybody will respect her, and nobody was going to say if somebody gets a news, oh, of course, it's Tony because of Chantal. Oh, it's Gagnon. Of course, he worked with her for many years at RDS. That's not going to be the case. She will open up things so that we will not, or that, the things will not come from the left field. It will be an open process. And for me, I'm happy for that. And it's going to be very interesting to see how much time she will be able to get there.
Chantal is very smart, and she knows that the media should be used as an ally and be considered an ally and not the enemy or anything else. And through the media, we can get the team closer to the fans if we allow the media to do their job. I think she's going to do a fantastic job. You said you were surprised that she took it, but in a way, it's pretty hard to say no when the Montreal Canadiens come calling. I know she's going to do a great job. In ending, it's 10 seconds, and that's it.
Yeah.
Out of all the candidates that we talked about, If there's one that will not be granted a second interview, and you don't have to tell me why, but if there's one that doesn't make it past the first round of the interview process, give me one name.
Patrick Roy.
On that, we end the Sick Podcast for today. François Gagnon of RDS, merci beaucoup. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. You can follow us on Instagram at The Sick Podcast, on Facebook at The Sick Podcast. Listen to us on iHeartRadio, and join us on YouTube. Subscribe. It's absolutely for free. Until we do it again next time. Merci, François.
Bye-bye.
Salut.